Does this thing work? Alrighty. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I was going to say afternoon. That couldn't be right, right? So thank you for being here. This is the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project, Howard Cooper Remembrance and Poetry Exhibition. And I am feeling super celebratory. I'm excited about every poem that's going to be shared with us tonight. The students have worked hard. Justin has taken quite a beating to be here tonight. Yes. So I want to welcome you. Thank you again for being here. The first thing that I want to do is invite our esteemed County Executive, John Olszewski, to come and have a word, if you won't mind. Ladies and gentlemen, John Olszewski.
Well, thank you, Nancy, and good evening to all. It is a pleasure to join you tonight for this memorial. I'll just say I also am looking forward to hearing from our young people, and sort of takes me back to my time in the classroom, and just really a reminder of what a bridge and a tunnel and a vision to the future that you all represent. So thank you for the ways in which you stepped up. Tonight we again remember Howard Cooper, a teenager who was lynched right here at the Towson Jail in 1885, just 15 years old, convicted by an all-white jury, with a mob of 75 taking him from the jail to murder him before his lawyer could file the appeal. And again, it's important to remember all of these things, but also that it didn't happen in the Deep South. It happened right here in Towson. It happened right here in Baltimore County. And sadly, atrocities like these were committed for centuries in this country. We know there were more than 40 lynchings in Maryland, and why it's so critical that we gather each year to remember. And I want to thank the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project for gathering to remember and taking the time to reflect. Because racism isn't just a part of our country's history, it's certainly a part of our present and future as well. So thank you for shining a light on our past, for facilitating these memories each year here in Baltimore County, and for ensuring that we never forget. I do have executive citations for our award winners tonight, and I just want to say again to our young people, we are so very proud of you. Thank you for stepping up and carrying the torch forward as we remember this very important past, so that we can be better as we move forward together. Thank you very much.
And now we'll have Ravon Horsendorfer come up and lead us in a moment of prayer.
It may be obvious to some of you that I'm not Reverend Penn from Mount Olive, but he didn't show up, and I was asked to lead us in what will be a moment of silence. My name is Ravon Horsendorfer. I'm a member of the Baltimore County chapter of the Maryland Memorial Lynching Committee, and it was my privilege to marry a Quaker woman who taught me a whole lot. And one of the things she taught me was to shut up, to be quiet. And so using the admonition that comes from Psalm 46, be still and know that I am God, I would like us to spend a moment in silence. It's been my experience that in silence we have to confront our evil, and in silence we confront the unspeakable possibilities of life that are before us. And I think, look at this group and think of what's being done here, and think about the progress we are indeed making, how far we have to go, but we are on the way there. So let us keep a moment of silence. This will not be 5 seconds, we'll make it a full minute. I hope your heart is full of joy and gratitude and thirst for justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravon. And we'll move forward with remarks from Will Schwartz, the president of the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project. Yeah, be careful, Will.
Yes, you see. Okay. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. Before I forget, I want to make sure to thank the committee that put this thing together. You guys are awesome. I know everyone appreciates how much work it is. I also want to thank the students who took this on, and the teachers who helped, and the administrators, and thank you so much for making it important, because it is important. And also the people that did the judging. I mean, it was a wonderful effort, and you are all to be congratulated. Mostly I want to thank Justin DePrima, because this is his monument. And he worked so hard to put this thing together from the get-go, and I just can't say enough of what a magnificent job he did, and how comforting it is for those of us who work in the coalition to know that this is taken care of. That we do not have to worry about this, because Justin did. And so, Justin, thank you so much. So, I think I'm supposed to talk about the Howard Cooper story, but I'm not. I'm not going to do that, because I think most of us probably know that. The county executive just kindly pretty much summarized it, and if you're interested, on the other side of that marker that was dedicated here on May is the story in full, and it's worth reading. Actually, both sides are, if you haven't done it yet. I want to talk about remembering, right, and why it's important that we are here to remember. Years ago, many years ago, I was applying to go to graduate school to get a PhD in philosophy, and so let me just answer the question. I have no idea what I was thinking either. I mean, it seemed to make sense at the time, and so we're just going to go with that for now. But one of the things that interested me was I was interested in doing this research and doing work on how language works, right? How language can get outside of itself and illuminate life. How it makes the ineffable intelligible. And certainly we're going to see an example of that tonight. The artistic use of language is one of the wonders of language, and how it allows us to step outside the limits of our physical senses and make human experience intelligible emotionally. So that is a distinctly human, I think, activity. Remembering is also, I think, a distinctly human activity. And I'm not talking about conditional learning, a rat figuring it out its way through the maze, or a dog reminding you when it's time to eat. I'm talking about the kind of remembering when we ascribe meaning to history, right, to our lives. We search for meaning when we try to make sense of our lives. And this kind of remembering, I think, it enhances our lives, because it strengthens our connections with each other, with our community, and with our history. And I think it also helps develop our empathy muscles. And I think that's an important exercise in and of itself. So what I want to suggest is that when we remember in this way, as we're doing tonight, we're not only honoring the past, we are affirming our own humanity as well. And I think that experience is enhanced by gathering here tonight. It's a commitment not only that we are making, not only to acknowledge our history, but we are making a commitment to each other by being here together. And it brings us closer to the history that we're focusing on tonight. This right about here was where the sycamore tree was that they hanged Howard Cooper from 137 years ago today. right over the fence here was the Bosley farm. Howard Cooper's mother lived there. And the reports are that she heard the posse coming that night to get her son, and she knew what was going on. We have the historic East Towson right across the street, and Sandy Bottom, these historic black communities. This being here is important because it puts us, viscerally in the fabric of history. It's our history. And so I think we should use this experience tonight as a way to remind ourselves that the forces of white supremacy, which is, that led 75 white men to lynch a 15-year-old black child right here, those forces are still functioning, right? White supremacy has not disappeared. As Barbara Smith likes to say, it's an operating system. It's always on and it's always there. And it's our responsibility to respond, to recognize it, to respond in our lives and in our communities. And this remembrance is one way to respond. It's how we find meaning in this history, and it's how we affirm our own humanity. I don't know how many people pay attention to this stuff, but yesterday there was a new poet laureate named for the United States, and named by the Librarian of Congress, who, by the way, is one of ours. She was librarian at ran the Pratt Library System, Carla Hayden, and the woman that she named as poet laureate yesterday, her name is Ada Limon, and she and Miss Limon made an observation yesterday that I think kind of speaks to the moment that we're in. She said that it's important to remember that even in this particularly hard moment, a divided moment, that poetry can really help us reclaim our humanity. And I am thrilled to be here tonight and to be a part of that exercise. Thank you very much.
And so, without further ado, and one correction, Will mentioned East Towson and Sandy Bottom, and I forgot to say who I was. So, my name is Nancy Goldring, and I am on the leadership team of the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project. I'm the president of the Northeast Towson Improvement Association, and I live in East Towson, and my family, my great-great-grandfather started the church, which is all that remains of Sandy Bottom, right at the corner of Bosley and York Road, Mount Olive Baptist Church. So that's who I am in short. And without further ado, I introduce to some and present to others the famed Justin Duprima. Come on up, Justin.
So for those of you who don't know, I teach for Baltimore County Public Schools at Dumbarton Middle School. Thank you, Nancy. On this day last year, 4 of my students recited original poetry to commemorate Howard Cooper. And the power of their words inspired the creation of a racial justice poetry contest for students about the age of Howard Cooper when he was murdered. The contest was for 8th graders across Baltimore County in both the independent and public schools. In this inaugural year, we received 60 entries, and those entries were then sent to the George Washington Carver Center of Arts and Technology, where students of their literary arts prime put the poems through a rigorous 4-round adjudication process. I don't think anyone from Carver is here, but we do owe them a debt of gratitude. And this evening, you will hear a poem that received honorary mention and 4 of the top 5 winning poems. And they will be performed by the students who penned them. Now, just before we get to them, there's 2 important things. Number 1, for those of you who don't know, these young poets speak in conversation with the greats, from Angelou to Whitman, and even contemporaries like Amanda Gorman, who all use poetry as a tool to call out the injustices of our nation. And poetry as a tool is uniquely effective for making the invisible visible, raising our consciousness, and offering pathways to racial healing and reconciliation. Number two, we should all learn a little poetry etiquette for these students. This is not your quiet Barnes & Noble poetry reading, okay? We're outside. If you hear a line you like, we snap. Can I see you snap? Yes, yes. And if there's a line that really blows your mind and you don't have time to snap, you just have to let it out. You let out a mmm. Can I get a mmm? Oh, come on. Can I get a mmm? Yes, all right. I think we're ready for some poetry now. Our first poet received honorable mention for her incredible poem. She comes from Dumbarton Middle School. Please put your hands together for B.
Hi, my name is B. Bushler, and my poem is called Our Rooted Past. Our past is how we grow. Our past is how we heal. Our past is the roots to a tree growing with time. But our past has been cruel and heartbreaking and horrid, as people are murdered for the color of their skin, as they take their last breath not knowing what they did wrong because they didn't. When Ahmaud Arbery is out on an easy Sunday jog with what to make for dinner in mind, he has to hurry home to make his mom's favorite meal, excited to see his mom's face when the timer goes off, as he pulls it out of the oven. Lost in his thoughts, he is clueless to the black pickup trucks tailing him, clueless to how long he has left in this world. As his heart starts beating faster and faster, the three murderers drive faster to block his path. As they point a 12-gauge shotgun at him, Ahmaud only has two options: turn his back to the gun and accept death, or reach for the gun leveled at his head. He chooses the second, and in only a second he is shot 3 times. 3 times Travis McMichael pulls the trigger. Ahmaud drops to the street, unaware of the hole his death will leave in his family and the world. People began peaceful protests for justice. They ran in solidarity and posted online #IRunWithMaude. His death motivated laws to be changed, but his siblings and parents still cried out for him to come home. They faced another sleepless night. His aunt felt an overwhelming wave of sorrow. She rocks back and forth on the wooden pew of the courtroom, Ahmaud's murderers standing before her. They present a history of hatred, one that we must grow away from. This murder is rooted in the past. But if we wish to grow like how branches expand on a tree, growing towards the sun into beautiful flowers and fruit, we must take action now. A tree started as a small seed, but it still grew leaves and bright pink and yellow flowers. We can find these flowers, but it takes time to heal our wounds, and it takes time to move past our history of hate. If we work together and reconcile our differences, we can create a better tomorrow.
Next, we'll hear from one of our top 5 winners, Stella from Catonsville Middle.
My name is Stella Skane, and I'm from Catonsville Middle School, and my poem is titled The Prequel. Injustice, a word used so often, yet is very rarely resolved. Too many faces hide behind indifference and would rather not get involved. I once had no opinion, but now my mind has changed. Once I saw how the violence had led to outrage. No more sitting back, no more there's nothing I can do. This is everyone's fight, and it's long overdue. Oppression has been in America for over 400 years. It started with prejudice and continues on through fear. Fear of the different and fear of the truth, that something needs to be done, and it starts with us youth. Through protest and outcry, we've taken on this fight to uphold the freedom that should have been given as a birthright. They have argued that our age denounces our proclamations, but we will not stand by when those who censor and oppress have dismantled our nation. There is no doubt that great strides have been made. It's 2022, and the BLM movement has not begun to fade. The road to justice for all may be bumpy and filled with holes, but we know where we're going and we keep sight of our goals. An age will dawn where we can truly say, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. The time will come, we're just now in the prequel.
So now I'd like to present to you, we have a researcher in the house, and her name is Jenny Lyles. And Jenny Lyles, in her research acumen, has an interesting way of changing the way we see things and seeing things we never saw before. Jenny, come on up. Ladies and gentlemen, Jenny Lyles. Research in action.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Lyles, public historian, and I work with the Baltimore Coalition. Today we gather in the memory of Henrietta Cooper's 15-and-a-half-year-old son, Howard. On this day in 1885, he was lynched by an angry mob whose mission was to not only murder Howard, but to also send a clear message to the African American community that not only are the adult men not safe, but that their sons of any age could find themselves in the hands of a lynch mob. I began this speech with a reference to Henrietta, Howard's mother, because I felt from the beginning of my work with the coalition that it was my duty to have everyone know her name as well as Howard's. I feel connected to Henrietta as a mother and as a woman. I feel like many mothers that I can understand the love and dreams that she had for her sons. Henry and Howard were born in Ruxton in January of 1870. The advances and changes that she was seeing in this country could have possibly given her hope to dream and conceive of a better life for her sons than that of her husband Joshua and herself. Howard's brother Henry died before any of those dreams could be fulfilled. It was Howard who would be left with the dreams of a mother. In 1870, the year that Howard was born, a law was passed requiring support to African American schools in Baltimore County. At that time, there were 13 African American schools in the county. In 1872, more support was passed for the African American schools within oversight by the county board. And at that time, Howard was 4 years old and approaching his kindergarten year. There were 23 African American schools, with requests for more to be constructed. Howard lived in Ruxton, Towson, and Riderwood areas during his 15 years. In the early 1880s, the Lutherville School was opened for African Americans, school number 24. At this point, Howard was too old for the school. I often ponder if there were adequate schools for all children in Baltimore County, would Howard's life have been different? If the schools at that time would have had been created to fulfill the dreams of all children and their parents, how different our communities would be. For many, education is the first step in changing of a family and their future. That upward mobility of education and skills and job training allows wealth building and prospective growth. This was denied to Howard and his peers within this community for so long. It would be decades later that students who wished to attend high school would be allowed to attend high school in Baltimore City at one of the African American high schools. In 1947, Carver High School was established in Sandy Bottom, Towson, a decision which came with backlash from surrounding communities who wanted the school to be placed in Cockeysville. This school continued to be the only offering of an African American high school in Baltimore County until integration in 1956, when all of the county public high schools were open to all residents. Carver reduced in population and became a 2-year vocational school, and later in the 1980s, a school for the arts, 1990s, a magnet school, and in 2012, a brand new school called the George Washington Carver Center for Arts and Tech. You may be asking yourself, why is she telling us the history of education in schools on this day, a memorial of Howard Cooper? One, I can't help but do that. That's just who I am. I find a way to tell you something about history. Sorry. But the reason really is simple. I feel that on this day especially, it is important to remind everyone of what could have been for Howard. The dreams that he and his mother would have had were not able to be fulfilled, but those same dreams we see fulfilled in the young people we have here today. We have these amazing young people who have spent their time and creative forces to engage us with the painful history and aftermath of the lynching of Howard Cooper. As I listen to their words and ideas and passions, I'm made to realize how much they might have had in common with Howard. Their age, their dreams, their desires, their connections to family and community. It is this that gives me hope that Howard and Henrietta's story and dreams and lives will not be forgotten. And while Howard was not able to fulfill the dreams of his mother and himself, his story is a spark for the young people we see here today. They are the torchbearers of community activism, storytelling, and change. They are the dreams of Howard and Henrietta. They are the next generation change makers and the future. I hope that not only these young people here today, but their classmates, community peers, and friends will join with them and engage in the history and needed change in our community. So with that being said, I feel that as a historian and a mother, I can proudly say that Howard and Henrietta's names, stories, and dreams are no longer lost, but now remembered for all time and pushed forward for everyone to continue their legacy. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce our next change maker. She is Precious from Southwest Academy. Let's welcome Precious.
My name is Precious Olekupo, and my poem is called Brown Skin. Listen up closely. We must not hold our heads down crying. We are beautiful. Our brown skin glows. Don't mistake my black skin for weakness. I am just as capable as you are, maybe even better. Our rich African roots deeper than the ocean, our luscious hair curls, beautiful thick hair, for we are powerful. Our Father God in heaven made us in a special version of his own image. Brown skin that comes in different shades but glows like pearls. Our children were killed because they're black. They take our skin for granted. Our skin is not something you pick up off the shelf and if you don't like it, put it back. No. We are leaders, kings, and queens in black colors. You think just because we're wearing a black hood, that we're gonna kill or rob. No, we are tired, striving, trying to make it. Listen up closely. We must not give up a stand up, but give up a stand up to our battles. On this Black History Month, things must change.
Next, we will hear from Eve from Dumbarton Middle School.
My name is Eve, and this is my poem. The names of the oppressed are the names that you let yourself forget. You sit and you smoke and you laugh while we scream. You with the badge, you smiled while George Floyd suffocated. Each time you breathe in, think about the breaths that you never let him take. You with the gun, you sped while you broke Freddie Gray's spine. Each time you take a step, you need to think about the steps that you will never let him take again. You, the oppressor, you, the coward, the villain. It is time to wake up and realize that you are no hero. You are not blessed with the opportunity to murder. You are not God nor a protector. You are the oppressor, the one who needs to wake up. You are a coward, afraid of color but not colorblind. You are afraid of anyone whose skin is not white, afraid of anyone who does not believe in bloodshed. You, the murderer, it is time to wake up and realize that you are the one shooting children. George Zimmerman, you shot Trayvon Martin, a 17-year-old boy buying Skittles. You shot a child because you said he was a threat. Brett Hankinson, you shot Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old woman. You had no clear reason. You had an indifferent value for her life. Derek Chauvin, you suffocated George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man. You thought he was running from you, so you took away his right to breathe. What has happened to our world? Why can't we stop? Where do you draw the line? Are we meant to accept the apologies? Are we supposed to sit with the short sentences? Are we doomed to pat you on the back and say that you just weren't thinking right? This issue is not as small as you. This is embedded in our history. This is the system, and it is time to wake up.
We have an advocate for criminal justice reform in our midst, Gail Robinson. Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. I feel privileged and honored to speak and participate with all of you in commemorating the life of Howard Cooper and to face the truth of his brutal death that gives us insight into a very cruel period in United States history. Every time I read or hear Howard's story, I come away with a heightened sense of social consciousness and a strong motivation. I am moved to act. And as an attorney that's worked in the criminal justice system for many, many years, 2-3 times longer than most of the students that are here today, but I couldn't help but to identify, and every time I read it, I see something different in terms of how the criminal justice system just failed him on all levels. There was no jury of his peers. Black people were prevented from serving on his jury to hear his case. There was no acknowledgement of the dangers of the crowd and the sentiment, that dangerous sentiment that was brewing and growing. And as an attorney, you have these tools in terms of, maybe I can file some motion where I need to do something to get him out of Baltimore County, maybe somewhere else where he would be safe, or hide him so he would not be in that kind of danger. But that didn't happen either. And one of the things that really, hit me when I read one of the articles was that it was a judge in the Supreme Court of Maryland back at that time who actually, and I know all of you are familiar with the story of Howard Cooper, but he was lynched just hours before his lawyers were going to be able to file a petition with the Supreme Court. And their basis for their motion was that he was denied his constitutional right to a free trial because Black people were not allowed to serve on his jury. And they were going to raise that issue to the Supreme Court, but they needed money. So this group of lawyers and these community activists, they raised money from the Black community and the Black churches, and they were able to raise the money so they could file this petition. And that's what sort of fueled this mob to come get Howard Cooper, to lynch him before he was able to get any possible justice. They had some fear and apprehension and were afraid that he might just actually get some justice and maybe he would not receive the death penalty, or he might even get a new trial. But this judge on the Supreme Court, after the mob had lynched him, actually expressed little sympathy, and what he basically said was, the summary disposition of this case, meaning the lynching, would not have occurred if the friends of the condemned man, and we know right now he's a 15-year-old child, but he's talking about the people that raised the money for the petition. This would not have occurred if the friends of the condemned man had not resorted to the extreme measures they took to raise the funds. And as an attorney, it was just really sort of a slap in the face just sort of another awakening. I like to think that I'm woke, but it's always good to be with people, to learn things, to commemorate things like this, to make you even more woke and give you more inspiration that you've got to do something more. And it was something Will said in his remarks in terms of, you know what I mean, in terms of something, it makes more sense. I started to take stock in what it is that I'm doing. And I wanted to make more sense in terms of what am I doing when I'm representing people and I'm fighting in court every day. And I took stock in terms of, I know things have changed. Let me just sort of look around. I know things have changed because I'm getting results and I'm fighting, and I know there's a cultural shift and a change, but let me just hold on to something. Let me find something recent development that I could hang mine. Just sort of look at and go, yeah, things have gotten better. Things have gotten better. So I decided there's been quite a number of things, but I decided to sort of review and look at the things that happened, hopefully during the lifetime that most of these young people were born. I'm getting used to being one of the oldest people in the room. But one of the things I wanted to say is that, you know, it's just sort of grateful that I am looking at a generation of people, of kids, that the death penalty is in the way back in the rearview mirror. You're growing up in a world where you don't have to worry that the criminal justice system has this very finite punishment when the system itself is so broken, still so broken and not perfect. You have no idea. I mean, you see so many documentaries of how many people were given the death penalty when they were actually innocent. Actually, the very first person that was free from death row from DNA evidence was a case here in Maryland. The gentleman's name is Kirk Bloodsworth. He was found guilty of rape and murder and was condemned and put on death row until, thank goodness, the evidence was still there for someone to test, and he was free from death row. He's the first person in the United States. But in 2013, after a couple of studies that were done, one was called the Paternoster study, I'm sorry I showed it, and the other was a commission study of the then Governor O'Malley. And what it found was that it's something that we all knew, but it's always good to see the numbers, that African American men were disproportionately sentenced to death. 2.5 times more likely they were going to be sentenced to death if their victims were white, and over 3 times more likely sentenced to die, more so than if their victim was black. So for a number of very compelling reasons, one of them is that the death penalty was administered in a very racially biased way, which those studies revealed. Back in 2013, the governor finally signed the bill to repeal the death penalty, which I think was huge. In 2015, we had the Maryland legislature decided to repeal mandatory minimum sentences for drug offenses. These were also disproportionately applied to African American males. African American males made up 87% of people that were serving mandatory minimum sentences. Back in that time, this law, if you sold a half a gram of crack, got convicted, and then 2-3 years later did it again, you were looking at no less than 10 years without parole. If you did it a third time, you got 25 years without parole. So 2015, those laws were repealed. So we're moving in the right direction. 2017, we had almost an overhaul of the bail reform, where the Maryland Court of Appeals enacted a rule which basically strongly encouraged judges to not use the cash money bail system anymore prior to trial. It disproportionately negatively affected poor people who could not make bail prior to their trial. So you were incarcerating a lot of nonviolent people, people charged with misdemeanors. They were being incarcerated almost found guilty and convicted and sentenced because they couldn't make these cash bails, $1,500. Some as low as $1,500, $1,000. Some people just don't have the $100, 10% of that to put up. So that rule has been drastically reformed, the bail system in this case, and I've seen it for myself. The trend, the very strong trend that judges are using to release people prior to trial. So that's something that I have seen that has evolved and changed in the right direction. One more thing that I'm most excited about is that last year, less than a year, in October of 2021, the Maryland legislatures enacted what they call the Juvenile Restoration Act. And what this is that it targets but children that were charged as adults and got these very lengthy sentences could now, after they've served at least 20 years, if they've served at least 20 years, they're eligible for a petition to have their sentences reduced. And judges have to give you a hearing when you file these petitions. And you can do it every 3 years. And we're having a good amount of success with some of these petitions because some of these young men now are in their 50s. A lot of them are in their 50s and 60s. And they were sentenced when they were 14, 15, and 16 years old. All of these recent enactments of the law that, in my view, are starting to address some of the disparities and the racism that we know has permeated our history in America. We're finally getting to the point where people's consciousness is risen, and we're starting to help. Like I said, the most excited about the last one, where we really help the modern day Howard Coopers of today. Howard Cooper would have been one of the people we would have been able to help. The horrible thing that happened to him to begin with, but we're able to help the Howard Coopers of the world with this latest Juvenile Restoration Act. So it's all slow in coming, but how it happened with groups of people like you all, with students like you all, with events like this that compels you to face the harsh truth of our history and to want to do something about it. All of these acts of legislation came as a result of a lot of research, students writing letters, constituents reaching out to their delegates, educators, healthcare workers, teachers, attorneys, everybody that had a stakeholder in the criminal justice system, which is all of us. That's what it took to get these kind of enactments. And I want you all, it starts with events and organizations like this. I firmly believe that it is the conscious actions of events like this that will make a change. I think take a few seconds, and you students are remarkable. I love hearing these poems. This is my second year here listening, and it's just absolutely remarkable. Take a moment to applaud yourself, just a moment, but then realize that the fight must go on, and it must be relentless, and it requires no less. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail, for that knowledge and that inspiration. And thank you, Jennifer. I forgot to thank Jennifer. Where's Jennifer? She's here somewhere. Oh, thank you, Jennifer. Oh, man. I need to take a breath after that. Don't you wish all of Baltimore County were here to hear that? Anyhow, yes, yes. Our next poet is from Dumbarton Middle School. She was one of our top 5 winners. Her name is Marin. Please welcome her to the microphone.
Hi, my name is Maren Blanks. I'm from Dumbarton Middle, and this is my poem. This is not my poem to write. This never has been, never will be, never is. This isn't my poem to write because my ancestors' blood does not run through the veins of the Capitol's walls. Because I've never been chased from stores, curses spit at my heels like venom. I shouldn't be playing the solo of this concert. I should be the swell of music that builds in support. The quiet hum that follows, the rhythm beneath the melody. The command that quiets the torrent of intolerant voices so that they may listen to what they refuse to hear. I should shout the names, the families, the deaths, without questioning their integrity, their value of character, what they did and didn't do, inserting opinions that no one asked for. Fact, George Floyd was wrongly murdered, put through hell for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Fact, Emmett Till was 14 when he was tortured for a whistle he didn't make, an act that's excusable when done by an old white man. Fact, Sean Monterosa was shot at 5 times over a gun he didn't have. Fact, I will never have to deal with a fraction of the things a person of color is forced to deal with. Fact, I have no place in this discussion unless it's to uplift, to support the chorus, to hand my microphone to silence voices. Otherwise, I should really shut the hell up.
Now you may be wondering why there's one poem remaining in your program. This was our 5th award winner. She's not here today, and it's not on the program, but I felt if this is being recorded, she'd want to hear her words, or others may want to hear the words read aloud. I was hoping to pawn this poem off on a former student, but I don't see any here today, so if you'll excuse me, I'll read this for the first time out loud and we can all enjoy it together. It's called Rough Ride by Nina. Freddie Gray was taken on a rough ride. He tried to run, he tried to hide, but that's how life is on the west side. His life changed in an instant. He wanted to run, he was hesitant. Freddie knew that in Baltimore you were guilty until proven innocent. On Pressbury Street they caught him with a knife. His trial was on the concrete. Freddie got life. He was pushed and shoved into a van, not enough room for a 25-year-old to stand. A young 25-year-old man, killed without a cause, killed without a reason. Everyday police killed without a pause, because every day is killing season. Together we must be strong. Together we must stand up and fight. Together we must speak up for what's right, because together we are strong.
And now I'd like to introduce to you Amy Millen. She is the founding member, one of the founding members of the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project. Amy.
Good evening, and thank everybody for coming tonight. It's my honor and privilege to introduce our next speaker. Stephanie Robinson is Howard Cooper's first cousin 3 times removed. She participated in the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Oral History Initiative, and tonight she's come here to share the words that she had prepared for last month's Truth and Reconciliation hearing. Stephanie?
Nervous. Hello, my name is Stephanie Robinson. I am the relative/distant cousin of Howard Cooper, a Maryland lynching victim. I started researching into my mother's side of the family last year in June. Upon researching, I came across a lady by the name of Jennifer. Jennifer had created a family tree of my late grandmother, Hester Henrietta Fisher, and it led me to reach out to her. In doing so, I learned that Jennifer was a part of the Maryland Lynching Project and had conducted research into my ancestor Howard Cooper and the rest of my family. We talked and connected briefly, comparing and sharing stories, trying to fill in the gaps as best as possible. In learning from Jennifer, I became enthralled and intrigued more about learning about my ancestor Howard Cooper. It wouldn't be until almost a year later when Amy Millen contacted me to discuss further about the Maryland Lynching Project in conjunction with the Maryland Coalition and Howard Cooper. One of the questions Amy asked was along the lines of, how did or do I feel about learning about Howard and other victims of lynching, and how do you think it equates to present day? And while I have provided an answer in our interview, I had some time to reflect more in depth, and quite frankly, I would sum it up in 2 words: disappointed and confused. I'm disappointed because my relative was lynched in the 1800s, and here we are in 2022, and I can't say too much has changed, except the style in which we are being lynched. From police brutality we witness today, from our very own that kill each other in our backyards. Not much has changed from then up until now. I'm disappointed because the sheer color of our skin deems us guilty from the very start. A black man in a hoodie walking down the street is automatically guilty. A black man driving a nice car is automatically pulled over and searched. Our color simply is a threat. Melanin, period, is simply a threat. I'm confused as well. Confused because when did color dictate how we see and treat someone else? Confused because I see the ignorance, the slaps in the face repeatedly by the justice system. There has never been justice for all. If it were, my ancestor Howard Cooper and many more would have been given a fair trial. If it were justice for all, Breonna Taylor would have been able to sleep peacefully in her bed after working tirelessly to save the lives of the very people who deemed her and her boyfriend as criminals. If it were justice for all, Trayvon Martin would have been able to get a snack from the store and return home. If it were justice for all, George Floyd would have been able to return home to his child. Instead, he was painted as a drug dealer, a black man who had drugs in his system before he was ever acknowledged as a victim of police brutality. Where is the justice for all when UVA, Texas school shooter gets painted as a victim before a criminal? He was bullied for not having the latest clothes in school. I'm confused because how do people not see the disconnect? Honestly, I do believe you see it, you just choose to ignore it. It doesn't serve your benefit or your agenda. You're not suffering, so why you do anything about it? I'm confused because our fight has been consistently the same, to be treated fairly and equally. Nothing more, nothing less. Most of our ancestors were forced here. For what purpose? For them to do the work while you profited, to gain control, to have power. How was that justice for all? How did us wanting to be treated fairly result in us being lynched, being found automatically guilty? How did us wanting to be treated equally result in misuse of power, misuse of authority? I say this to everyone, and I'll say this now. No, I was not there, and I do not know what anyone is capable of. My ancestor Howard Cooper was accused of a heinous crime against a white woman, sexual assault. He was deemed guilty even though the victim never testified to a sexual assault, only that a physical assault of rocks were being thrown at her. Well, that was bad enough, and you'd like to know the reason why. That still doesn't excuse the fact that he was still sent to jail, then hours later lynched by an all-white mob. Where was his due justice? If Howard was a white man, just answer this question to yourself silently. Would he have been lynched? Like Howard, many people across this world are not treated under the guise of justice for all. Many of us are profiled and treated inhumanely simply for the color of our skin. Many of us are still being lynched, just in modern day, by police brutality and by our own. Because if you truly think about it, lynching became a circus for the white man to get amusement from killing a black person. What do you think is being said when police kill us? What do you think the white man says when we kill each other? It's still and has always been a circus show at our expense. When does it stop? When do we acknowledge that the mere color of our skin shouldn't dictate how they are treated, how we are profiled? When do we acknowledge that they don't have to fear us? More so, why do you fear us? When it should be that we fear you. Our ancestors were beaten, enslaved, raped, lynched, shot to death, starved to death, whipped, chained. Is it even fear, or could it be that you know what you have done and it's still being done and you fear the retaliation? The thing is, we don't want to beat you, enslave you, burn you, lynch you, pull you over, and kill you at a traffic stop. We just want it to stop happening to us, period. We want to be treated humanely like the rest. We are treated inhumane, seen as thugs and criminals, yet the highest criminals, paid criminals might I add, are the sitting behind our desks, policing our streets, and signing off on orders. Let that sink in. To the Maryland Lynching Coalition and Baltimore Project, sorry if I forgot anybody or mispronounced the names, I want to extend my sincerest gratitude and thanks to you all, working tirelessly around the clock to make sure you all seek the truth behind the history of our beloved ancestors. May this open up new truths, bring closure and peace to some families. May this spark conversation on how to move forward in a positive direction, to learn to try to coexist with one another. Learn about the other before we pass judgment. Continue to be the voices for those who lost theirs many years ago. Thank you to every single party involved for the hours of research, reading, driving, interviewing. I pray all of your hard work and effort does not go in vain, and may this project be the most efficient and well-nurtured project Maryland has ever seen. The blueprint to show that everything done in the dark will eventually come to light. Peace and love to you all.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for your words and thank you for being here. Ravon?
I'm still not Reverend Penn. And if I'd read far enough in the program, I'd realize we had a period of silence planned for the end of this ceremony. As I'm sitting here with you tonight, I'm thinking about something that the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project emphasizes, as does the whole project across the country, and that is the sense of place. And I would like you to kind of sit up in your seat and place both feet on the ground and think about the powers that contended here. Gail Robinson made mention of something that's always on my mind in relation to the lynching that happened here. The lynching happened here not because Howard Cooper was already sentenced to death. It happened because of the power of the African American community. And the Reverend Harvey Johnson, the fifth pastor of Union Baptist Church, and the Mutual United Brotherhood of Liberty that he pulled together, all of these African American lawyers and clergy, and the power they had, the organizational power they had, they actually, in a certain way, became the foundation of the NAACP. And it was fear of their success that drove white people in Baltimore County to say, we're not waiting for the scheduled execution, we're going to come execute Howard now with a lynching. But we leave out the part about the power of the African American community that was always resisting the white supremacy. And those powers came to clash right here on this ground. So it's not just the death of this one young man, but as we've seen in the marvelous poets we've had tonight, it's about this clash between white supremacy and human dignity for all. And we should never, ever forget that the African American community has played a very central role in the resistance to white supremacy all 400 years that this has been going on. And so when we get up out of our seats tonight after being dismissed by Nancy Goldring, let us stand together, shoulder to shoulder, as allies now, not as saviors or anything else, but as allies in the struggle against white supremacy. Thank you.
Justin. Everybody.
Okay. You just say.
Yeah, he says that, who do you want to thank? I would like to thank you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time, the students, for rigorously looking, thinking, massaging the language in the way that's required to produce a work of poetry, a work of art. Thank you for your time, your energy, and your courage. Thank you all for being here.
Yes. I want to thank the event committee that worked with me to put this together. I'd like to thank all the speakers who graced us this evening, and also the poets. And I wanted to end with a quotation from the late Congressman John Lewis, who famously said, "Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble." I want to thank all the poets for their exceptional voices tonight, and encourage them to continue to make some noise. And I want you to know that everyone here, gathered here right now, has your back. We are a community as Ravon just mentioned. We are allies. We are here for you. Thank you to everybody who came together to support the poets and to support these causes. And I want to remind everyone that we have refreshments. I know it's hot out. We have lemonade and cookies, so please gather, meet each other, say hello, and have a wonderful night. Thanks again.